Hi, my name is Zuleika, and I'm going to be using my field experience as reference for my observation report. Just to give some background information, I am doing my observations at an elementary school in Madison County, and I am observing two different classrooms. One is a kindergarten classroom, and one is a first grade classroom. So the kindergarten classroom is it's a very small group of six. We essentially go to two larger classrooms, kindergarten classrooms in the building, and we kind of grab the ESOL students out of those classrooms and we take them to another classroom. And my mentor teacher and we work with those students. And then there's another one, the first grade classroom that I observe is a classroom full of 23 students, and it's mixed. So it's like you have some students that their first language is English, some students are learning English, some students are proficient in both, and there's also some students with disabilities in there. So yeah, it's definitely a good experience for diversity and trying to figure out how teachers effectively teach all different, multiple learners in the classroom. So, so both the kindergarten and the first grade classrooms, my mentor teacher's focus is language arts and vocabulary building, so that's what we do most of the time. Um, for the kindergarten class, it's about 45 minutes at one point in the day, so then after the 45 minutes, she sends them back to their classrooms where they remain for the rest of the day. The first grade classroom is, I only help out with the language arts part, so it's about an hour and 15 minutes, I think, for their whole English for the day. So in both of the classrooms, I've noticed that there's a lot of repetition, and I feel like that's because in language arts you have to do like multiple different themes and you have to learn multiple different words, so they want to really repeat those concepts over and over again so the kids it's drilled into their heads. But especially with the ESOL students, I know in kindergarten, like repeating songs and word phrases and vocabulary words is very important because that's how the students learn um, to memorize those words essentially. And putting pictures and saying the words every day, and they're seeing the words and the pictures at the same time every single day, that's really what gets it into their heads. And I see that it works, it really does. And with the first grade classroom, I've noticed that the students will be assigned two paragraphs for a whole week to read over and over again for that entire week. And at first I'm thinking, wow, this is a bit repetitive, but then after a while I see why they do it, because not only do the students, their pronunciation gets better, but their reading speed gets better because they're not just memorizing the words, but they're actually, it's a flow. It's like they're learning how to, read along with their class together in unison. And it's like a bit of teamwork, but it's also like you're really paying attention to the words and you're keeping your finger on the page. That's one of the things that my mentor teacher really tries to drive home, is that they need to keep their finger on the word and make sure they're following along with the class. So they do that every day, and the repetition definitely helps build their vocabulary and their pronunciation, especially with reading aloud. So I've definitely noticed that, and also I think repetition, repeating stuff over and over again in education is just, it's just how you learn. Because I know for me, it's helped me a lot with going into these classrooms and trying to help the teachers out, because at first I have no idea who these students were. Didn't know their names, and it was very difficult trying to figure out where they might need help, and basically where my mentor teacher would want me to help the most. But the more I come and the more often I help these students out, I'm starting to figure out their quirks and their different cues that, oh, hey, I'm not understanding something, or can you repeat that again? So it's just like repetition is just a part of learning no matter what stage you're at. As an educator or a student, it's definitely going to be part of learning no matter what. I'm just finding that the more often I go, the better I get at identifying what exactly I need to slow down on if I'm reading a book to them, or what I need to point out in the book. Because there was a situation where I was reading a little, I think it was a decodable book. Yes, it was a decodable book, and I was reading it to the kindergartners. And as I'm reading, I'm supposed to read it once, and my teacher wanted me to read it again. And I didn't know why at first, but the second time around that I read the book, one of the students pointed to the picture and said, "What is that?" And it was the basketball hoop. I would have never guessed had he not pointed that out to me, that he didn't know what a basketball hoop was. So I'm also finding out that there's some things that I would never think that the student might not know, or, know in English, that they know in their language. I would never know to say, "Hey, do you know that that's a basketball hoop?" I would have never slowed down enough, or maybe even completely stopped and asked that question had, the child not pointed it out. Which is also why I think repetition is important, because they're seeing me more, so they're getting more comfortable with asking me questions, and just showing their personality more when I'm talking to them, so I can definitely help them out more if they need help. But I just think that it's definitely something I want to take into my future classrooms as an educator. I don't see how you can teach without repeating multiple concepts multiple times throughout the day. So it's definitely something I want to use in my own classroom, and I don't see how I don't see how that can be avoided anyways, because I don't think that learning can take place if you don't repeat it enough. Since repetition is one of the key factors in retaining information and committing it to long-term memory, I feel like teachers don't have enough time to actually go over many concepts multiple times in the day, because there's so many different time constraints that teachers have to follow. I know that my mentor teacher and I have had to cut our lessons short, or speed run through a review really quickly, just so we can be able to take the test on a Friday. And I just, the way that education works is that you can plan out your day perfectly to the T, but it won't go that way, or it might never go that way, because teaching is spontaneous, and students can be different in each day. The teacher might be different in each day. So it's very spontaneous, and you have to be able to be flexible. And if students need a little bit more time on a subject, you have to commit to that time, and then figure out how you're going to also follow the lesson plan. And that's one of the biggest factors, I feel like, is that teachers are placed under such a large, so many different responsibilities, and different time constraints that you must follow throughout the day. You don't want to go over your time, because you'll cut into another teacher's time, and you also don't want to just end your lesson abruptly when the students are actually engaged. So it can be very difficult trying to figure out what corners you can cut in your teaching, and what areas you actually need to focus on. And I can see that my mentor teacher is actually she's very experienced in this area, so she's been teaching for over 20 years. So I can see how a newer teacher could come into her space, and she would be able to pinpoint the different ways you can maximize your time, but a newer teacher might not be able to. So that would cause maybe some worry, and repeating different concepts, so you would end up probably just skipping over it. And I feel like that's really difficult, and it just comes with experience also. But I feel like there should be a little bit more leeway in allowing teachers to lead the classroom where they want it to go, because teaching to the test isn't always the best, in my opinion. But if you're going off topic, you might just be focusing on a concept that you see that your students really, really need, that might not be on the test, but the test isn't exactly what you feel like you should be focusing on in that moment. So I just feel like there's many different ways that teachers can include repetition in their classrooms, but the time is a very big issue, and I'm seeing that more as I, observe in the classrooms, and just see how experienced versus newer teachers deal with those different time constraints. But it definitely has a big impact on how you lead your classroom, and what concepts you cover over and over in your classroom, and how your students can really commit everything to long-term memory if you're just flying through it just so they can take the test at the end of the week. So I definitely think that's something I really must think about as I move forward in my observations, and also just being able to think about that in my own classroom one day.